What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Next Gen Geek. I'm your host Darius, and in this video we'll be talking more about Marvel's Avengers. And this is going to be more of a dive deep sort of thing because the Marvel's War Table previously happened, so we'll be just talking about more of the stuff, and as well as from recent interviews and an AMA on Reddit, more about Marvel's Avengers as a whole, and specifically in this video, the combat. And so I've seen a lot of people actually have a bit worrisome and it looks repetitive. Well, don't worry, I'm here to tell you it's not that repetitive as you might think, because let's face it, to me, or at least in my opinion, it looks like it's a combination between God of War and the Arkham / Spider-Man series, just combined. That's how I see it. Because, and one of the biggest reasons as to why it looks like that is because Vince Napoli, the director, the lead combat designer for this game, actually worked on God of War. He wasn't the lead, but he did work on the combat in that game all the way back in 2018. So for me, how I see it, I do see it, it's very Destiny-like in the sense of maybe abilities, your R1, L1, and your super. I do understand that frustration and why people are maybe a bit taken back by this for a game that they would consider to be really even much bigger. But here, let's discuss more about the combat. So in Marvel's Avengers, you have, let's talk about heroics. You have heroics, right? The heroic abilities. And there's a mixture of three. You have your support, which is basically sort of buffs and it helps your allies and yourself as well. So such as Thor's warrior, what was it? Odin Fury, something for Thor, where basically he kind of buffs up, gives certain allies a small window of invulnerability. And we do see, and as well, we also have Assault Heroic. Your Assault Heroic is pretty much how it sounds. It's basically an all damage out ability. So for example, we see Iron Man doing his Unibeam as one of his assaults. Or Thor does his God Blast, which is basically a lightning blast. So what's really cool and I think really interesting about the heroic abilities is that you can actually store another one. So for example, let's say you're Thor, you have your God Blast ability, your God Blast, Lightning Blast, right? You can do it once, then almost right after, like consecutively, you can do it a second time. So I think that layer of creativity and that layer of finesse to your abilities is really interesting. And we're about to get into the skills and other stuff like that. So of course, just like Spider-Man and even the Arkham series, there is a skill tree, just like any other really action RPG, like Horizon and even in God of War, we do that. They do have a skill tree. And that skill tree gives our characters and gives characters in general a nice linear progression of new abilities, new weapon abilities, and etc. And so that's no stranger to Marvel's Avengers. But here's the thing with Marvel's Avengers. The skill tree that they've implemented, they have basically a few tabs. If you see in the war table, you see about 3 to 4 tabs, and each one affects certain things about your character, such as melee, range, intrinsic ability, which is very similar to, let's say, Injustice's character trait, where they have a specific ability that affects them. So for example, intrinsic abilities are essentially unique to each character. For example, Thor's intrinsic abilities are naturally based around lightning. So the first of the intrinsic trees involve regular moves that a player can use during combat. And then you have your intrinsic overcharge, which is the overcharge abilities that is into the heroic moves that they later show on later in the War Table demo and in the stream. So I think that's really cool. And the fact that when you look at the skill tree, that every aspect can be customizable, how you can grab enemies, and not only that, but also how gear can affect things. So let's say, for example, Hulk normally can, with one enemy, he can only carry by 2. Again, we don't know for sure, but let's say it is, right? That he carries a huge enemy with 2 hands. Let's say you're Iron Man, you use your Pimtech, you shrink it, now he can carry multiple of those large enemies, one in each hand. Like, I think to that layer of degree of customizability and custom, really gameplay aspects, I think is what's going to set this game apart as far as combat and skill trees and all of that combined. So not only that, and we talked about status effects, you know. So even certain gear can affect, let's say, certain moves. So for example, I believe Vince Napoli touched upon that recently, saying that you can be Hulk, right? You can take a large boulder off the ground. You can climb up on a building and leap off and basically ground slam, causing a damage and AoE effect. He went on to further say that with gear, let's say one has gamma radiation or gamma attributes or cosmic, it can be imbued into that boulder essentially. So in a sense, it's like the gear can affect, let's say, your grab attacks. So again, this layer I think is really interesting. It's really gonna not only, as I've said before, set this game apart from, let's say, Destiny and Anthem, but the fact that they're really going into the Marvel lore to amplify these abilities and to amplify basically attack strings and everything like that. Because I've personally played Marvels Avengers at New York Comic Con back in 2019, basically last year. And I'll tell you right now, that the combat in itself, the foundations, right? It was really fun to play. Like, I really like playing, like, one of my favorite characters was playing as Captain America. I enjoyed tossing my shield, or like, you know, charging it, tossing it, then kicking it back. Then after I take that, you know, I do a power slam on another enemy. Then after that, another enemy comes up behind me, and I counter him, and then I dodge out the way, and then like I do like a freaking finisher on or something on him. Like, I love that sort of style. I love that it sort of has that fighter game like feel. But again, this is more Destiny-esque and of course Anthem-esque because of the abilities and everything like that. Then you also have Ultimate Heroics. Now your Ultimate Heroics are, you pretty much have seen this. For example, Thor is like a thunderclap, as we've seen in the 8-day demo. And we also see Thor in the latest War Table stream, where he summons all 9 realms within him and just teleports within a shield and destroys and causes massive amounts of damage. That is the fact that he can call upon the 9 realms, basically teleport within a shield, cause some damage, get that D, not like that, I mean damage over time, I mean. I think, again, that's really cool. And I think we've also got a glimpse of Iron Man's, which apparently looks like to be the Hulkbuster. Like, what? The Hulkbuster is his ultimate? Dude, I'm so excited and I'm so hyped for this game. Not only that, but with the skill tree, it looks like not only you can customize certain abilities and certain attacks and combo strings, like just with your square and triangle, but also other characters will have different weapons that you can go through. So for example, we see in Iron Man, especially in A-Day, and in the recent one, if you see on the top bar, he actually has sort of 3 weapon slots essentially. He has his regular repulsors, which go into combat, which we see in A-Day, he blasts enemies. Then we see his lasers, which we also see in the War Table live stream, where he's like slicing through enemies, and he does that Iron Man 2. You know, yeah, I did the sound effects, deal with it, I don't care. Yeah, I'm freaking weird. Yeah, I'm fucking weird. I know I'm weird, stop it. But anyway, so we see more of that, and again, this detail and this layer, of course, is not like ultimate detailed in like every little thing. No, but like they're really taking the comics and the characters and their lore and what makes them unique and special, such as Iron Man's suit, and doing it in a way that's going to be fun and not feel so repetitive as a lot of people may think that the game will look. Now again, if you were to say it looks repetitive because of maybe the enemies, I can understand that. Yes, it is robots. We've dealt with plenty of robots in other games as well, like Destiny and like Anthem. I completely understand that. But again, AIM is just one of the few enemies that we will have to fight against. There's also going to be the Watchdogs, which it looks like the Watchdogs will be in this game. And if the leaked list is trophy and achievement list is true, the Kree could possibly be coming into the game and we will have to fight some of them. So again, this is some of the combat and basically how the mechanics sort of work essentially. And when I personally played it, you had your regular power attack, which is for the triangle. I'm going to use the PS4 controller layout essentially. So triangle was like your power attack, and you see this in the game, in the War Table, and even in A-Day when Thor has to take down like a boulder or something in the A-Day demo. Basically he has he does 2 hands on his hammer, lightning strikes and slams it down. That's your power attack. Then you have your light attack, which is your regular combo string, which is square. And you can do it 3 times in a row or whatever. But then you also have another form of attack that's not just your gadgets and other abilities, and that's holding down the square. Holding down the square to what I think it is really a heavy attack. So you have your light and heavy in one button that you can switch between the two, and of course you can dodge out the way, keep going, or you know, counter, keep going. And then you have your triangle, which is your power attack. So you have 3 different really attack buttons and attack animations for each character. Not only that, but then we also have the skill tree that modifies all of those different things, including the heroic abilities. And let's talk about the heroic abilities and how really you can customize that too. So we all know so now we've established the abilities. Now the heroic ability for Iron Man is a regular unibeam, as we've seen with A-Day in the recent War Table livestream. Not only that, but if you pay attention to a certain scene where he's playing against this, where you see an Iron Man player against this like robot forklift looking dude, right? When he activates his heroic, it's not just his unibeam. If you're familiar with Avengers 1, in the scene with Iron Man and Thor in the forest, and when Thor essentially powered him up nearly 400%, he basically did his both repulsor beams and his unibeam at the same time at the enemy, and he does it in the game. So the fact that you can customize even your assault to do different things instead of a regular unibeam or anything like that, it makes you wonder what can happen with, let's say, Hulk's assault ability, assault heroic, or Thor's assault heroic. And again, I think this is what's really going to make players come back, want to do different builds. Heck, I think Scott Amos, the head of Crystal, said he likes to play Hulk ranged. Yeah, you heard that right. A ranged attack Hulk. I never thought I'd put those 2 words together in a sentence at all. But yeah, even he likes to prefer a ranged attack Hulk. Again, there's just so much variety and so much different things that go into the game and on top of the gear that I think is going to be really cool. Not only that, but you also have team finisher. So basically, when the enemy stun meter is all the way up and they get stunned, 2 Avengers can come together and do a team finisher. Now, we don't know if we can combine different abilities together, at least to the detail I'm thinking. Recently, on an AMA with the Warzone director, he did touch more upon that as well. So, for example, you can be Thor, for example, right? You can pin enemies against the wall. And you can be Iron Man. Now that those enemies are pinned, you can use your unibeam on them. Or you can be Hulk, do a thunderclap, and while those enemies are in the thunderclap, you as Thor can do your manual targeting within that group, and it still hits them, and it causes even, more damage on top of damage. Which, again, I think it's really cool. I'm thinking the level of, let's say I'm Iron Man, and I do a unibeam at Cap's shield, and it ricochets off. If you can do that, I'm sold. I mean, I'm already sold on the game, but that just, for me, that's oh boy. Oh boy, I'm pretty excited about that. So again, and as well, you also have every character, or at least most characters, can have different weaponry. Iron Man, as we said before, repulsors to laser and rockets, different combos relating to that. Depending on which one you set as your primary or whatever, you can still switch between the 2. So imagine just that customizability and that layered combat on top of one another. Widow, clearly she's going to have not only her eskrima sticks, like Nightwing, but also her bow staff, and apparently not just her dual pistols, but also probably rifles as well. So it makes you wonder, what about maybe Captain America, Thor, Hulk? I don't think Hulk's really going to have different weapons, but they haven't really talked much about that either. So again, this is basically a sort of 101 about Marvel's Avengers combat, and I hope this gave you more insight and more knowledge as far as how this combat is going to work and how detailed it is ultimately as well. And I'm pretty stoked. I can't wait for the beta. I can't wait to pre-order it, wait for the beta, play it, see how I feel. My only worry with the beta is that now, because of the pandemic, everything's being done at home. So is it really efficient and effective enough to even launch a beta? And we don't know how that's going to work. Are they going to have people at the studio, go to the studio and handle the beta stuff, handle the online aspects? We're not really sure. So again, this is another Avengers 101 breakdown video about specifically the combat in this game, and why I think you guys should be excited. Again, if you're not, let me know why. Let me know in the comments down below. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and the notification bell right next to it to stay up to date on the channel, as there's a lot more to come. The next video in the Marvel's Avengers series that I have will be dedicated to war zones and explain a bit more about war zones now that more information has surfaced regarding how war zones work Is it open world or not? And what type of mission varieties and missions can we expect from this game? Not just launch, but also post-launch, since all the content's supposed to be free after launch, except cosmetics. But anyway, that's your video. I'm your host, Darius. This is Next Gen Geek. Stay tuned for more. And this is basically what the channel is going to be all about. You know, talking about comic book gaming, talking about movies and the comic book shows and all that type of stuff, what works, what doesn't work, and eventually a whole episode dedicated to analyzing a specific character and what makes them work and why they're iconic and special for that reason. And I'll tell you just a hint of what that character will be in my first part of the analysis series. Do it? Do you get it? Yeah, you get it. So again, that's it for the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.